So in this video, I'm going to be talking about enthalpy, which is defined as the heat transfer or heat of reaction for a constant pressure process. So there are two main types of reactions, and one of them is exothermic and one of them is endothermic. And here I'm using Hill diagrams to basically explain the processes. So for an exothermic reaction, the starting materials is at a higher energy state than the products, and that is an exothermic process because in order to reach a lower state, there has to be energy released throughout the reaction. So here the starting materials are at the middle of the potential energy spectrum at this point. So we have to reach the top of this hill, which is the transition state for the actual reaction to begin. So that energy that it initially takes to get up the hill is called the activation energy, or the energy needed to actually begin a reaction. Once the activation energy has been met, from here the reaction proceeds. And the products for an exothermic reaction ends at a lower energy state than the starting materials. So that means that the overall reaction releases heat, and that is an exothermic process. Now, the change in energy from your starting materials to your products, right here, is called enthalpy. That is your change in heat, and in this case, heat is released. Now, for an endothermic process, the opposite is true of exothermic. So basically, an endothermic process is using more heat or energy than it is releasing. So here, the starting materials are fairly low on the potential energy spectrum, and the activation energy is very, very high, which means it takes a lot of energy in order to actually begin the reaction. So once the activation energy has been met, then the reaction proceeds and the products end at a fairly high energy state. And that is endothermic, is when the potential or the energy for the overall reaction is actually higher at the end than it was at the beginning, meaning the reaction actually absorbed energy rather than releasing energy. So that's the main difference between exothermic and endothermic, is that exo releases, endo absorbs heat. And enthalpy is basically the change in energy or the release or gain in energy from a reaction. So for exothermic, enthalpy is always going to be negative. For endothermic, it's always going to be positive. For exo, it's negative because it's being released. For endo, enthalpy is positive because it's being absorbed. Now, those are the basics of enthalpy. Thank you.